Good morning, you're watching Addis News Hour. I'm Zoltan Desalegn with the news. Thank you for joining us and do stay tuned. In a statement it issued the previous day morning, Ethiopia vowed to defend itself from the TPLF's fresh aggression. According to the statement, the terrorist TPLF has launched attack in Eastern Front in violation of ceasefire and defying the ongoing peace talk efforts. So adept at spinning tall tales, the TPLF unashamedly released its own statement accusing Ethiopia of launching a military attack the previous day morning at 5 a.m. in the direction of Chobeber, Janora, Yalo, Alamata, and Bala. And BM Alamayu presents Goshu Meliso's file. Take a look.
The statement recalled that the government declared unilateral ceasefire immediately after the terrorist group had been wiped out of Amhara and Afar states and facilitated unfettered humanitarian access to Tigray. Consequently, the government has arranged all the necessary conditions for continued humanitarian access to the Tigray state and delivered food and non-food items and medicines and other needed supplies to the people in the state, according to the statement. It went on to recall that the government released high-profile prisoners who were leaders of the terrorist group in its continued efforts for peace. The statement said, Main Peace Committee has been established to speed up the process and ensure that the conflict is peacefully resolved. Efforts are also underway, it said, to commence restoration of social service institutions and infrastructure damaged by the terrorist group in the state. The terrorist group has also been reverberating false accusations against the government as if the peace process failed as a pretext to continue its belligerence. And defying the peace process, the TPLF has continued belligerence and started beating the war drum and eventually launched an attack in the Eastern Front, particularly in Bisober, Zobel, and Takulesh directions since 5 a.m. in early morning. The National Defense Forces and all security forces are countering the attack by the TPLF in a coordinated manner. The TPLF is a pathological liar. A day after a video of the TPLF leader Debretsion Gebremechael that shows him mobilizing war during an engagement with residents of Mekelle is released on social media, the Tigray Military Command released a statement accusing Ethiopian government of no military offensive. The statement that was published by Dimtsi Wayane television on Wednesday said that the Western Command shelled our troops' position on August 15. It did not say if there was a casualty on the part of the TPLF. However, it said that it investigated whether the offensive was initiated by commanders of the Western Front or by the Ethiopian government. And the TPLF claimed that the offensive had authorization from the Ethiopian government. Ethiopia said the reappearance of sympathizers of the terrorist group and reemergence of their social campaign is taken by the government as a propaganda support for preparations the junta is carrying out to declare war on the nation. The government of Ethiopia strongly believes that the peaceful alternative is vital to address problems faced by the people of Tigray. The government also called on the international community to push TPLF to desist from mobilizing youth towards peace and stop beating the war drum. If the terrorist group continues its aggression, the government will be forced to exercise its legal, historical, and moral obligation to defend the nation from any threat. The National Army is ready to safeguard peace and security of citizens from threats posed by the TPLF. The government and all the security forces are in a better position to deter any attack and push the terrorist group into peaceful solution, the statement added.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Wednesday that he was saddened by the resumption of hostilities in Ethiopia. In a press briefing, Stefan Dujarric, spokesperson for the Secretary General, said the UN was deeply shocked and saddened by the news of the resumption of hostilities in Ethiopia. Citing that Ethiopians of all ethnic origins have already suffered too much, Dujarric appealed for an immediate cessation of hostilities and resumption of peace. Take a look.
The Secretary General said a few words about the situation in Ethiopia, saying that he was deeply shocked and saddened by the news of resumption of hostilities in the country. Ethiopians, Tigrayans, Amharans, Oromos, Afars have all already suffered too much, he added. The Secretary General made a strong appeal for an immediate cessation of hostilities and the resumption of peace talks between the government and the TPLF, with the full guarantee of humanitarian access to people in need and the reestablishment of public services.
Earlier on Wednesday, the Ethiopian government said the terrorist TPLF started fresh attacks on different positions on the Eastern Front in utter violation of the ceasefire. Duyarik took the occasion to condemn the looting of the WFP warehouse in Mekelle by the TPLF on August 24th, adding the looting will heavily impact humanitarian aid efforts in all of northern Ethiopia. Take a look.
This morning on August 24th, a World Food Program warehouse in Mekelle was forcibly entered by Tigrayan forces who took 12 fuel trucks, tankers, with 570,000 liters of fuel. The team on the ground unsuccessfully tried to prevent this looting. These stocks of fuel were to be used solely for humanitarian purposes, with the distribution of food, fertilizer, and other emergency relief items. This loss of fuel will impact humanitarian operations in supporting communities in all of northern Ethiopia. We condemn any looting or confiscation of humanitarian goods or humanitarian premises.
Ethiopia has seen a devastating conflict between government troops and forces loyal to the terrorist TPLF since November 2020, which left millions in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. Despite unrelenting efforts by the government to conduct peace talks with the TPLF, the latter responded with increasing belligerence.
ጊዜ ይለዋወጣል እኛ ግን ጸንተን እንቆማለን ሀገር ማለት እኛ ነን
You're watching Addis News Hour.
Stories that happened regarding Ethiopia over the past 24 hours.
Okay, there have been just a handful of stories, but for the time being, I've just chosen two of them, which are for.
Most trending issues that have been making headlines in the past couple of days.
Yeah, I have assessed the media and I have seen tweets of the Prime Minister.
You're watching Addis News Hour, and we are on the segment of What's Trending. And in our trending stories, we'll be devoting some time on the implications of the statement given by Stefan Duyarik, spokesperson for the Secretary General. And I'm joined by my colleague Binyam Alamayo to thrash out some issues regarding the development in Mekelle. Good morning, Binyam. How are you?
Thank you for having me.
I'm very pleased for you to join me here. But as we actually get towards to the trending stories, one of the things Duyarik mentioned in that statement that was the UN condemns the looting of the WFP warehouses in Mekelle by Tigrayan forces. But the question is here, are some issues being raised in connection to that? And what is your observation, really?
Okay. Thanks once again, Zoter, for having me. So the fact that the UN forwarded a statement condemning the looting of the WFP warehouse on the 24th of August in the town of Mekelle is a welcome development. But looking at it, or when you dig deeper, you find that there are some issues, there are some fishy issues, one of which is that there's no less than 570,000 liters of fuel looted during the plunder which took place in that town. Now, if that's true, as the UN Chief Dujarric has already confirmed, then there's a doubt lingering in your mind that the TPLF and its international cohorts were saying for quite some time that there was shortage of fuel in all of Tigray to assist or aid the transportation of aid to the needy community. So that's one of the rantings, that's one of the complaints coming from the TPLF all the way. But we now hear that this amount of fuel has just been looted. So this is confirmation that there was fuel and that there was adequate supply of fuel. Now you remember that earlier this month when the representatives of the EU and the UN went to Mekelle and dwelt at length with the representatives or the leaders of the TPLF on some of the new developments, especially with regard to the much anticipated talk with the Ethiopian government. What came out was that there was an acute shortage of fuel. That's what they told us at the end of the visit, and the TPLF was very glad that this the world community understood the gravity of the problem this much. But then we're told now that this amount of 570,000 liters of oil has just been looted. So it kind of evokes a doubt that is that for real? I mean, yes, it was looted, but then there might be some kind of collusion between the TPLF and some international aid agencies. So they forward a statement saying that this much amount of fuel was looted, but then they wait for some time and tell the whole world that there's nothing now because what was left was already looted by the TPLF. So we want fuel, and the international community might give them fuel, and it will be channeled all the way to Tigray through the good offices of the Ethiopian government, because the Ethiopian government is always concerned about the safety and well-being of Tigrayans, or everyone in that state up north who is in needy situations. So if that happens, and the TPLF continues to plunder, probably in collusion with these international partners, then the pockets of the TPLF continue to be fatted so that it finances the war efforts and then cries foul, saying that there's no shortage and its international cohorts support it. So that's one of the things we'll be looking at during our 9 p.m. news update. There's going to be a news analysis on this one as well as other developments, because some are doubting what really transpired in that part of the state. So that's what I have for now.
Which we will be looking forward to the 9 p.m. news as well. Thank you very much, Binyo.
Okay, welcome.
Meanwhile, as the TPLF presses ahead with its warmongering, its fabrication of what has become known as the Tigray genocide is being exposed. The ethnic-based divisions and animosity cultivated in Ethiopian society over the years while TPLF was on power provided the terrorist group with an ideal setting to pursue its evil agenda. Every time an individual or group demanded for their rights to be respected, says Yonas Melaku, an Ethiopian political analyst and researcher, in an article, the TPLF rebranded them as acts of incitement for genocidal violence against Tigrayans. Tsugusunisa has the following account. Take a look.
It's counterintuitive but true, says Melaku in an article published on Star. He goes on to say that the TPLF worked hard to have genocide committed against the innocent people of Tigray that it has taken hostage, but Ethiopia has denied TPLF that opportunity at enormous cost. Ethiopia now needs to focus on disabling and disbanding the hostage takers once and for all, lest they might not be as lucky next time. Israel and Rwanda achieved them because their society lived in the shadow of a history of genocidal cruelty. The TPLF does not own a region or a country blessed with a plentiful supply of oil. So Israel and Rwanda seem to provide the only potentially viable model for TPLF to try to emulate. There is evidence that the TPLF has closely studied post-genocide Rwanda. There is a deceptive simplicity in the way TPLF thinking goes. If a minority constituting 14% of national population could be threatened with near extermination in Rwanda, then with manipulation, incitement, persistent and systematic provocation and sinister propaganda, TPLF could find it relatively easy to get a few Tigrayans killed and build a plausible case of genocide. The TPLF's journey to reach here had several distinct steps. The TPLF anointed itself as the sole representative of the people of Tigray. The TPLF rewrote history of Tigray as one of victimhood that dates at least to 1889, when Emperor Menelik II moved the Ethiopian capital to its current location and purportedly deprived Tigrayans of their rightful place as a center of political power in Ethiopian history. On taking power in Addis Ababa in 1991, it introduced ethnicity as a defining source of identity for all Ethiopians and repartitioned the country along linguistic lines. It established a quasi-apartheid system in which ethnic Tigrayans, but only those close to it, systematically controlled the political, security, economic sectors in the country. Every time an individual or group demanded the rights to be respected, TPLF rebranded them as act of incitement for genocidal violence against Tigrayans, thereby justifying resort to extreme violence in the name of averting it.
A plane believed to be the property of historical enemies who want to destabilize Ethiopia and have been supporting the TPLF for centuries was shot down by the heroic Ethiopian Air Force. The National Defense Forces announced that the plane was downed while carrying weapons for the terrorist group and violating Ethiopian airspace via Sudan. Abtaman Shagri compiles the following report. Take a look.
The historical enemies of Ethiopia are trying to provide military assistance to the terrorist TPLF. As part of this move, the plane believed to be carry heavy artillery from Sudan has downed by Ethiopian Air Force today. The Air Force retweeted that the army remains on guard of any possible invasion by the TPLF. Major General Tesfaye Ayalew, head of Defense Force Deployment, told the Ethiopian news agency that the terrorist group, which has been making extensive military preparations for the past several months, is finally flexing muscles for a showdown at border areas.
በዚሁ ዕለት ወደ 3 ተኩል አካባቢ
The heroic Air Force has managed to shoot down a plane which violated our airspace. The plane tore into our territory at 9:30 a.m. this morning. It carried weapons to the TPLF. Thus, we took this appropriate measure.
ስለዚህም እርምጃ ተወስዶበታል ማለት ነው።
Ayalew also pointed out that the TPLF was constantly opening fire and attacking the National Defense Forces while coming up with bare-faced lies that Ethiopia launched fresh attacks.
ከሌሊቱ 11 ሰዓት ጀምሮ ውጊያ ከፍቷል። ውጊያው ቦታዎቹ በቆቦ ግራና ቀኝ ሆኖ
launched fresh attack at 5 p.m. in the Kobo area as well as Mount Zobo in the Amhara state. The TPLF also mounted attack at the Gisober area in Afar state.
እንዲሁም በቢሶበር በአፋር
The federal government is always as good as any possible attack by this terrorist group.
The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, has pledged a humanitarian assistance worth $5.1 million to people affected by conflict and drought in several parts of Ethiopia. The assistance has been announced by UNICEF Deputy Director Jane Muita, who conferred with the Women and Social Affairs Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Ergogi Tesfaye, in Addis Ababa. Tesfaye praised the UNICEF for its humanitarian support and mental health services to people affected by the conflict, calling for continued assistance to war-affected people in Afar and Amhara states, as well as those in Oromia and Southern Nations nationalities and peoples states. Responding to the request forwarded by the Minister, Jane Amuita affirmed UNICEF's commitment to deliver $5.1 million support to those affected by the man-made and natural disasters in the aforementioned parts of Ethiopia.
That I stand here before you, bearing witness to this momentous day, which marks the birth of a new era for this great nation.
Ensuring peace and security across the nation should be the top priority of the new government.
From the Ministry of Agriculture, from the Minister himself, the country has prepared about 13.2 million hectares of land for crop production, out of which 12 point something has been. In general, 93% is going to produce, and we expect 374 million.
Certain fundamental issues that are basics, that are necessary to launch the country towards democracy and prosperity. So in that regard, I think building national consensus on the fundamentals. Naturally, we cannot agree on everything.
Japanese ambassador to Ethiopia, Ito Takako, says her country is keen to maintain age-long relations with Ethiopia in development projects. The ambassador pointed out that Japan is ready to accelerate infrastructural development in Ethiopia. Kasam Jani reports.
In an exclusive interview with BBC English, Japanese ambassador to Ethiopia said Tokyo is committed to bolster ties with Ethiopian development endeavors. Ambassador Takako added that Ethiopia and Japan have also carried out a high-level industrialization policy dialogue.
Japan and Ethiopia have been enjoying a long and friendly relationship over 90 years. And I would say we are very, very similar in terms of having a unique culture, long history, and also trying to have the regional influence in the respective region. While Japan is a rapidly aging country, but Ethiopia has a young population that is growing. So I think we have a great potential to cooperate together. Yes, in historical terms, we had the first, after the war, the first state guest was from Ethiopia, and then the first Tokyo Olympic Games, Addis Ababa, Ababa Bikila was a very, very famous winner of the marathon. And 50 years ago, Japan started to have this cooperation with Ethiopia through JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency. So I think we will continue to enjoy the great relationship.
Elaborating on the wide range of cooperation with Ethiopia's ambassador pointed out that it is about time for her country to capitalize on the people and infrastructure in Ethiopia.
We have a lot of the countries to cooperate, but our basic policy is to meet with the needs and the desire of the recipient country. That is no difference in terms of our cooperation with Ethiopia. So our strength is to invest in people and try to grow together. Another strength is a quality infrastructure. During the time of the former Prime Minister Meles, there was a high-level dialogue for policy forum for industry development. And that is the one way of listening to the voice of Ethiopian needs and also what Japan can offer to Ethiopia. I think this is the way to grow together. And one of the area that has been successful is Kaizen, the continuous improvement that would enhance the productivity, efficiency of the companies here or the organization here, so that they can have more productivity with less cost, more profit.
Ethio-Japan relations stretch back to 90 years. During the Second Italo-Ethiopian War, the Japanese worked towards economic goals with Ethiopians in an attempt to expand Japan's trade with the rest of the world.
Ambassador Toshoma Toga briefed President of China Africa Institute Li Xingfeng and Horn of Africa scholars at the Institute on the current internal situations of Ethiopia. The ambassador mainly focused his briefing on the war in northern Ethiopia, the peace negotiation process, and the National Dialogue Commission. While explaining about the war in the northern part of Ethiopia, the ambassador noted that the government was forced to engage in this war after it had made multiple efforts to avoid the war from the start. Professor Li Xingfeng, on his part, thanked the ambassador for briefing him and his team directly in person and said that he is very much grateful for being briefed by the ambassador rather than hearing about it from the media. And he also noted his institution will continue to work with the embassy very closely in future engagements.
Ethiopia is implementing a green legacy initiative over the past 3 years. The nation target is to plant over 20 billion young trees across the country. This project invites neighboring countries like Eritrea, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, and Kenya.
Ethiopia's microeconomy remains hopeful despite many challenges. ETV English will look into this in greater details through fresh stories and news analysis. Coming to you this August.
In August, top stories on Addis News Hour. After the conflict in the northern parts of Ethiopia, the PLF is preparing another wage of war against Ethiopia. ETV Language is discussing these matters with professionals, experts, politicians, even government officials. We brought this information on Addis News Hour. Stay tuned to ETV Languages.
Sudan's National Civil Defense Council says the number of deaths resulting from torrential rains and flooding in the African country has risen to 89. Over 50,000 homes across the country have either been completely or partially destroyed. Let's take a look.
This is the aftermath of heavy rains in Gezira State, East Central Sudan. Homes and public facilities are submerged, and the only way to make it to safer ground is to wade through the water, like Asma Nureldin.
This is my house and nothing is left of it. No bed, no chair, no TV, nothing is left. It had 3 bedrooms and now everything is broken. We own nothing. We're living at the school.
She's among the 146,000 people who have been affected by the ravaging floods in Sudan since torrential rains began in May. Despite being homeless, some remain optimistic, saying their situation could have been worse.
This is God's fate, and we are thankful it wasn't an earthquake or a fire that burnt us. We are alive, and that's a blessing, and whatever God brings. So if it is not caused by humans, it's good. We are satisfied and thankful to God with whatever is brought to us.
They're now living in these temporary camps provided by humanitarian agencies. The United Nations says at least 25,000 homes have been destroyed. It also says the hardest hit areas are in Kassala, South Darfur, Central Darfur, South Kordofan, White Nile and River Nile provinces. Gezira State sits right in the middle of the White Nile and the Blue Nile. People here often experience heavy flooding whenever torrential rains fall, but recently they have become more severe. Experts say they are the worst floods in 60 years, and they blame global warming and climate change for the shocks.
You're watching Addis News Hour, and let's take a recap of the top stories once again. The terrorist TPLF launches fresh attack against Ethiopia. And Ethiopia downs aircraft transporting weapons to terrorist TPLF. Thank you all for watching Addis News Hour. I'm Zoltan Desalegn. Have a great day ahead.